Welcome to the Codcast, a weekly discussion about politics and policy in Massachusetts. I'm Bruce Moll from CommonWealth Magazine, and I'm speaking with a first-time guest, Kathy Judd-Stein, the chair of the Massachusetts Gaming Commission. Great to have you with us, Kathy.
Thank you, Bruce, and I appreciate you having me.
So I used to cover the Gaming Commission a lot during the early days when the agency was charged with selecting casino operators. But since the selections were made, so Plainridge Park opened in 2015, that's the state's slots parlor, MGM Springfield in 2018, and Encore in mid-2019, I've sort of backed off and haven't paid attention as much as I probably should. So I'm hoping you can catch me up a little bit today, Kathy. You were named chair of the commission in early 2019. And I want to get a better understanding, sort of what's your personal philosophy with regard to casinos? Are you sort of agnostic as a regulator, or do you think they're a great idea to open and have operating here? Or what's your take?
Well, certainly I am, as a regulator, neutral. And in terms of the decision by the legislature and the governor to allow for casino gaming back in 2011, I certainly followed that. I had an interest in the legislation as it was pending as an economic driver for the Commonwealth to provide some crucial construction jobs and operational jobs in the future, and of course revenue for the Commonwealth. But I also recognize that with the benefits of casino play comes some significant risk of harms, and I really appreciated the thoughtfulness of the legislature in terms of working in provisions to mitigate those potential harms. So in terms of whether I'm a gambler, no, personally I'm not. My grandmother was a great bingo player, Bruce, and she was French Canadian, and I would accompany her as one of her multiple grandchildren. But other than that, I'm a little bit mystified by all of it, but luckily I'm with a team now who really enjoy training all of the commissioners and teaching us about gambling. But in terms of regulating, I'm agnostic and a neutral, but pretty rigorous regulator.
That's your reputation. And I'm sort of curious, as a regulator, initially it was sort of the commission was launching a startup effort, trying to get these off the ground and getting them up as businesses. And you came in toward the end of that effort, and now it's gone into this sort of management of oversight of the operators themselves, rather than picking them and getting them up to speed. And I guess what do you see your role as there? The way you answered the first question sort of makes it sound like you want to make sure the harms caused by gambling are limited. But is your goal also to sort of make sure these businesses thrive, that they do well? You don't want them to fail, and that would be a disappointment for everyone, I would think. So how do you balance those two themes?
Well, I think that you really expressed it. It is a balance. I hear the word steady state, and quite frankly, Bruce, I am looking forward to a moment in my time at the Gaming Commission to be part of a steady state. I came on at kind of a high-profile time where the suitability of one of our licensees was being evaluated and through a adjudicatory hearing process. And then, of course, we got hit right with the coronavirus. So in terms of really our steady state regulatory management obligations, I can't say we're right there, because there have been some real crises for us to navigate. And I can say that with my fellow commissioners and the great team, we are navigating them. I see the role, and I appreciate the question. We have right now 2 of the 3 Category 1 licenses have been awarded, and we have, of course, the slot parlor in Plainridge Park Casino, Category 1, the sole license. So Massachusetts casino industry is really well defined and with a limited number of coveted licenses. So our job is to provide strict, regulatory oversight and to ensure that the public's confidence in the integrity of the gaming industry. But we also are partners in a way with our licensees when they come to us for for opportunities to ensure that their positioning for success in Massachusetts can be supported. That includes, how we evaluate requests for simple things like additional alcoholic beverage licenses. We don't know what the future will lie for each of our licensees, whether there'll be expanded options, but they by statute, they have quarterly reporting obligations to us, and we really review everything from those kinds of regulatory requirements, as well as their requirements to their community and their surrounding host and community obligations, and their obligations for financial to make their financial commitments to the Commonwealth, as well as their decisions on entertainment and all of the ancillary benefits that the legislature really anticipated, Bruce, when they really enacted 23K as such a comprehensive framework. So our oversight is certainly regulatory compliance oversight, but there is that partnership for goodwill, where we do want them to succeed. We do want the economic benefits maximized.
So, given that, now I haven't paid attention, so I'm trying to understand this a little bit better. When COVID hit, it wasn't long before most businesses that were in that type of very customer-facing orientation shut down, and so they shut down. I imagine sometime after March 10th. I forget when, and then they reopened in July. But they've been restricted about like any business in the state, they've been restricted about, when they can operate, how they can operate, all that stuff. But I haven't heard anything, whereas restaurants and all other businesses have been asking for help. Give us help, give us grants. And the Baker administration is providing some grants and whatever. Have we helped the casinos sort of weather this storm at all? Why? I know it would be the legislature that could adjust how much tax revenue they have to give, but have they been asking for help, or do they need help? I'm just sort of wondering. COVID has been a tough time for most businesses, and these are businesses that thrive on people coming to them. So what's your take on that?
That's a really interesting question. So just a little bit of background. We had the authority to temporarily suspend operations for the casinos when the public health metrics indicated that patrons and employees would be at risk. We were evaluating that as the reach of the coronavirus became clear. And we were very fortunate that these 3 licensees that we regulate were really cooperative with us. They too came really a joint conclusion that it was time to temporarily suspend operations. So through a virtual public meeting on March 14th, a little bit ahead of the governor's orders, we did suspend, we ordered this temporary suspension, orderly suspension, and they cooperated fully. We were able to assist through different technological arrangements that we have, and they were shut down. You'll remember perhaps that they also, in many ways, kept the benefits for their employees, and in fact, one was able to maintain salaries for their employees throughout the entire period. So they, what you're really touching on is the vulnerabilities that many of our small businesses were experiencing. Certainly the casinos across the globe, around the globe, were experiencing that. But when our 3 world-class licensees were selected, the commission kept in mind, would these organizations have the bandwidth, the resources, the business strategies, the know-how to be able to weather an economic or industry crisis? And I think what we're seeing is that these 3 licensees have the resilience given how they have done during this period. They have made no requests that I know of anyway of the state. Certainly, we negotiated in open public 2-day public meetings, our guidelines and restrictions to ensure an orderly, sustainable reopening. The governor put the casinos in phase 3. That that process showed that there were business decisions that were needing to be evaluated in balance with the significant public health concerns. We were tough, and you know what? They came around and accepted and really our guidelines, and luckily those protocols were adopted by the governor as the industry standard. And perhaps because they were pretty rigorous, we've been fortunate that first off, the licensees have enforced them. There's been full compliance around enforcement, and we really have shown that these measures are effective. You know, we're knocking on wood every day, but while we are, you know, we monitor all of the compliance publicly, they've been great community partners. They prioritize the safety and well-being of their patrons and their employees. And they also have met all of their financial obligations to their surrounding and host communities. You know, your listeners might be interested in knowing that Plainville receives over $4.3 million annually from PPC. MGM Springfield receives over $23 million annually. From MGM Springfield receives that. And then Everett receives over $25 million annually from Encore Boston Harbor, all part of their community, host community agreements. They met those burdens, and they've also been making all of their tax payments and assessments in timely fashion. They took these obligations seriously, and they've met them, notwithstanding really the pressures of the pandemic.
But just common sense would indicate, so I remember, now that my information is dated, but I remember when Wynn was starting up, Wynn Resorts in Everett, it was, they were spending a fortune, not only on the facility, but lavishly on employees and sort of the whole 9 yards. And then to have COVID hit, now, as you say, it sounds like none of the casinos have asked for any break on anything, and they're fulfilling all their obligations. But they have to be, are they not losing money in this environment? How are they doing financially?
Well, you know, I can't attest to their financial position. I'm careful to their public companies, but they of course were relieved yesterday to get some relief from the governor that lifting the curfew. I suspect the curfew was tough, and casino having to close at 9:30 is
Right.
a little bit of an anomaly for their business. But I would say that you know, they were positioned to be able to withstand these kinds of crises, and they're demonstrating that. They are eager, like everyone else, for these vaccines to take effect and for them to be able to return to normal, figure out how society will decide to go back indoors for entertainment and ramp up their businesses again. But in terms of losing money, I know that in December, they generated $14 million in tax dollars. Your writer for CommonWealth, Professor DeBoel, did a nice job in the January 19th column as he looked at machine per day spending. And he said, you know, notwithstanding all of the restrictions, people are going probably because of the safety standards, and they are getting some entertainment experience at the casinos. I think that my back of the envelope numbers show that, well, regardless of all the restrictions, they were probably averaging among the three about a 60 to 70% of December of 2019 revenues. So
yeah,
people are going, presumably because they feel safe. They can't hang out at a bar now. It's really restricted to active gaming. The plexiglass that we've added, the social distancing that's required, the table games are reduced in options, but it's only because, again, of safety concerns. They're being used, and I know that once once we turn the corner and the public health trends lift, they'll be able to completely re-engage.
Let me ask you a few shorter questions, I guess, not so broad.
Sorry.
No, not at all. So I remember one of the conditions, you mentioned that when you first came in, you were confronted with a big issue, which was there was this whole problem with Steve Wynn, and he was leaving, and that was Wynn Resort, was that company suitable to be a mass licensee? And I remember one of the conditions, you guys had some tough hearings about that issue, and you wanted Matt Maddox to go through, he's the CEO of Wynn, to go through some management training that he would have to go through. Has that happened? Has that all went off smoothly? Did that go?
So we did impose some historic fines, and we did impose some very stringent conditions. It's funny that you note that one, because in many ways, I didn't see that as punitive, but actually something that probably should have occurred for a CEO of such a multifaceted business at a time of crisis. So we thought that it was important for the board of directors to provide that to Mr. Maddox, and it's our understanding that they did engage a very highly qualified executive coach, and how many days or months or years they're providing that service. We don't care. We weren't interested in that. We were more really wanting to show that this is a complex business, and addressing some very complex HR matters, as well as just a very big position to take on.
And the next big thing probably on your plate is sports betting. Not that it's happened yet, but the legislature clearly is sort of moving in that direction. At least that's what the signals show. Is that, I know you're a regulator, you're agnostic about this, but are you guys preparing for this? Because I think the Gaming Commission in the bills I've seen would be in charge of regulating it.
That's exactly what I would say. We don't presume anything. We know there's a lot of work on those bills. You and I both know, Bruce, that the sausage making is complex, so we don't presume that regulatory role, but we do see that certain proposals in the past and currently do assign that regulatory role of oversight of sports betting in the event it's legalized. So we, over the last 3 years, have been certainly monitoring developments of sports betting across the country, meeting with other regulators to learn about how they implement their state's laws, and also looking at the regulatory schemes of other jurisdictions across the country. So we are preparing, and we want to be helpful to the extent we can be with the legislature or any other stakeholders. So we're preparing, but again, not making any presumptions yet.
Okay. And then I just, for most of our listeners, this is probably a peculiarity that they could care less about, but so a lot of the money that comes into the Gaming Commission goes out to all sorts of pockets, local aid and here and there and everywhere. But one of the ones that is sort of intriguing is a good chunk of the change goes to racehorses and racehorse development in Massachusetts. And Massachusetts is struggling to have any racehorse operations across the state. As a regulator, you're getting this money. Is it time to say we don't need that money going there anymore? Could it better be used somewhere else? Or do you feel like there is a future for racehorses in Massachusetts, racetracks?
Well, first off, I just want to say that Horse Race Development Fund, which is part of the statutory scheme, does support both thoroughbred and standardbred horse racing. And the standardbred horse racing program is doing really well. It seems as though that fund has accomplished the goal of not only supporting that community, but also growing it. And I could give a ton of examples that support that. The thoroughbred community has a little bit of a big, it's actually a big challenge because there's no thoroughbred track right now. But the fund also supports the breeding program. So the racing committee by statute has done a thoughtful process of figuring out how to support the breeding program and at the same time be good stewards for that fund. I'm not going to hazard a guess as to what should happen in the future. I just know that right now the Gaming Commission is the regulator of both standardbred and thoroughbred racing programs. The standardbred program is providing a lot of ancillary opportunities for not just what happens on the track, but what all the agricultural businesses that support horse racing, from the farms, of course, the veterinarians, the horseshoers, and then also the tack and feed shops and the fencing companies. And of course, there's a big commitment to preserving green open space. So on the standardbred side, where there's really a full race meet schedule, it's been very successful. The issue around a track is to really one that I can't really hazard a guess.
And for people that are not knowledgeable like me about this, the standardbred, just for listeners, is where they have the buggy behind the horse and they're going around a track, and Plain Ridge Park has a track at its facility. Thoroughbred is more like what you see the Kentucky Derby and horses with riders racing around the track. And Suffolk Downs is now being redeveloped, and there's a lot of talk periodically, but no pulling of the trigger on developing a new track. So that's what thoroughbreds and standardbreds, that's, some people don't know the difference. And
yeah, I mean, I had to learn the difference coming. This has been an area where there was no background, but it's fascinating. And there's really historic significance to the horse racing in Massachusetts. So, it's a great community. They're great advocates. I love to go to Plain Ridge Park Casino and watch the races.
But the money that goes for the thoroughbreds, I know that I remember there were all these meetings where they were trying to decide how much should go to one and how much should go to the other. Has it flipped now? It used to be the thoroughbreds got more money, and has it flipped now so that the standardbreds get most of the money? And because there isn't really much racing going on for thoroughbreds anymore.
Yeah, so this is a complicated process, and the statute is not uncomplicated. So, but the way it works is that the Racing Development Fund by statute has a formula, and 80% of that fund, and your listeners might be interested in knowing that it's not appropriated from the legislature. These funds come through the casinos. Maybe you mentioned that at the beginning. They fund this development fund. 80% is dedicated to the purses for both breeds. And then this racing committee thoughtfully decides, well, what's the split of that 80%? And this year, they came to us with a recommendation of 70-30 standardbred to the thoroughbred. 16% of the fund goes to the breeder programs, which I referenced, and that again for both breeds. And that's also a 70-30 split. And then 4% goes, and again by statute, to the horse racing community's health and pension fund. And that actually got split a little bit differently. That went 40 for the standardbred and 60 for the thoroughbred community to help them right now. The statute allows for the thoroughbreds to race outside of the Commonwealth. That, of course, presents challenges because of travel, et cetera. They come to us in consultation. We look, very carefully to support the community in terms of the selection of a safe racetrack. Those options are difficult, though, to find. So they are right now, the thoroughbred racing community, facing a challenge. And of course, it has a domino effect on the breeding program, which is a significant investment for them. So it is a complicated time for that community. But on the other side, the standardbred community really has reaped the benefit or really the vision of the legislative structure through that race development fund.
Well, Kathy, our time is up. I wanted to thank you for joining us today. And to our listeners, we'll see you again next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce.